You think kindness is always good, that being nice, helpful, and selfless makes you a better person. But what if I told you that your kindness is quietly destroying you and the people you think you're helping? Meet Sarah. 34 years old. Everyone's favorite person. The friend who drops everything when you call. The coworker who stays late to help. The daughter who never says no. Perfect, right? Until the day she collapsed in her office bathroom, hyperventilating, unable to remember the last time she did something for herself. Her therapist asked her one question that changed everything. When was the last time you were kind to yourself? Sarah couldn't answer. Because what nobody tells you about kindness is this. It has a shadow side. And that shadow is swallowing millions of people whole. Before we reveal what happened to Sarah, you need to understand what's actually happening in your brain when kindness becomes toxic. In 2020, researchers at the University of Oxford made a startling discovery. They studied people who scored high on pathological altruism, excessive selflessness that causes harm to oneself or others. Brain scans revealed something disturbing. These individuals showed hyperactivity in the anterior cingulate cortex, the same region associated with anxiety disorders and obsessive-compulsive behavior. Their brains were literally addicted to pleasing others. But here's where it gets dark. This addiction doesn't start with kindness. It starts with survival. Picture this: 8-year-old Marcus watches his parents fight. His mother is crying. His father is yelling. Marcus runs to his room, grabs his favorite drawing and brings it downstairs. "Look what I made," he says, smiling so hard his face hurts. His parents stop fighting. They smile. They tell him it's beautiful. In that moment, Marcus's brain learns the most dangerous lesson of his life. My worth depends on making others happy. My pain doesn't matter if it keeps the peace. I am only valuable when I'm useful. This is where toxic kindness is born. Not from generosity but from terror. The terror of conflict, of abandonment, of being too much or not enough. The brain's reward system lights up every time you sacrifice yourself and someone smiles. You get a hit of dopamine, a brief escape from the anxiety of potentially being rejected. But like any addiction, you need more and more to feel okay. And here's where it gets dangerous. Because that 8-year-old doesn't just grow up. They grow up learning that love is earned through self-erasure. And it looks like this. Number 5. You can't receive help without guilt. Someone offers to help you and your stomach churns. You feel like a burden, a failure. You'd rather suffer in silence than owe anyone anything. Number 4. You say yes when you mean no. Your body screams stop, but your mouth says, of course, no problem. You've trained yourself to override your own needs so automatically, you don't even notice anymore. Number 3. You attract people who take and take and take. Because takers can smell givers from a mile away. Your kindness becomes a neon sign that says, I will destroy myself to avoid disappointing you. Number 2. You feel secretly resentful but can't admit it. You give and give, then lie awake at night seething at how unappreciated you are. But you can't say it out loud because that would make you selfish, right? Number 1. You've completely lost touch with what you actually want. Someone asks, what do you want to do? And you freeze. Because you've spent so long shape-shifting to meet everyone else's needs, you've become a stranger to yourself. Let me take you back to Sarah. At 12 years old, her little brother got sick. Really sick. Her parents were devastated, exhausted, barely holding it together. So Sarah became perfect. Straight A's. No complaints. No needs. She made herself invisible so her parents could focus on her brother. And it worked. Her brother got better. Her parents praised her for being so mature, so helpful. But Sarah's brain had already learned, my needs are a burden. My pain is selfish. I am only lovable when I'm useful. 22 years later, she's still playing that role. With her friends, her boss, her romantic partners. Because a 2019 study from the University of California found that people with compulsive helping behaviors often experience childhood trauma or emotional neglect. They learned early that their value was conditional, based not on who they are but on what they provide. Sarah didn't help her coworker because she wanted to. She helped because her nervous system was screaming, if you say no, they'll abandon you. But the cruelest part isn't the self-sacrifice itself. It's what it does to the people around you. Meet James. 28. Sarah's boyfriend of 3 years. He loves her. He's grateful for her. But he's also frustrated. Because every time he tries to do something nice for her, she deflects. Every time he asks what she needs, she says, I'm fine. He feels like he's dating a ghost. Someone who's always there for him but never actually present. In couples therapy, he finally said it, I don't know who you are. You're so busy being what you think I need that I've never met the real you. Sarah was devastated. She thought her kindness was love. But here's what she didn't understand. Compulsive kindness isn't connection. It's a wall. A 2021 study on relationship dynamics found that excessive self-sacrifice actually creates distance in relationships. What? Because real intimacy requires vulnerability, boundaries, and the ability to receive, not just give. When you give from depletion, you're not offering love. You're offering resentment disguised as generosity. When you never express needs, you're not being selfless. You're depriving others of the chance to care for you. When you say yes to everything, you're not being kind. You're teaching people that your boundaries don't matter. This is the dark side of kindness nobody talks about. It doesn't just hurt you. It distorts every relationship you have. So if this pattern runs this deep, can it ever change? Here's what changes everything. Realizing that boundaries are the highest form of kindness. A 2022 study from Yale followed people who struggled with pathological altruism through boundary-setting therapy. After 6 months, not only did their anxiety decrease by 54%, but their relationships actually improved. Because when you stop performing kindness and start practicing authentic care, something shifts. Let me tell you what happened to Sarah. 3 months into therapy, her therapist gave her an assignment that terrified her. Say no to 3 requests this week without explaining why. Just no, I can't do that. The first time Sarah tried it, her hands shook. Her friend asked her to help move apartments and Sarah said, I can't help this weekend. Her friend paused, then said, okay, no worries. I'll ask someone else. That was it. No anger. No abandonment. No catastrophe. Sarah's nervous system was shocked. Her brain had been screaming that no equals rejection. But the data didn't match the fear. The second practice, the discomfort inventory. Every day, Sarah had to notice one moment when she felt uncomfortable saying yes, and instead of pushing through it, she had to name it. I feel resentful agreeing to this. I feel exhausted even thinking about this. I feel like I'm abandoning myself. Because here's the neuroscience. When you name an emotion, you activate the prefrontal cortex, which helps regulate the amygdala's panic response. You're literally creating space between the trigger and the reaction. You're giving yourself permission to feel before you perform. The third technique, reciprocity tracking. Sarah kept a simple journal. 1 column for what she gave. 1 column for what she received. The imbalance was staggering and heartbreaking, but it gave her data. Proof that her kindness wasn't creating connection, it was creating codependency. And slowly something shifted. 6 months later, James asked her what she wanted for dinner. Usually, Sarah would say, whatever you want. This time she took a breath and said, Thai food. I want Thai food. James smiled. Finally. I've been waiting 3 years to know what you actually want. So here's how to know if your kindness has a dark side. Ask yourself, do you feel guilty when you prioritize your own needs? Do you say yes and then feel resentful later? Do you avoid conflict even when someone crosses a line? Do you feel responsible for other people's emotions? Can you remember the last time you asked for help without apologizing? If you said yes to any of these, listen carefully. Your kindness isn't the problem. Your self-abandonment is. And here's the truth that will set you free. You cannot pour from an empty cup. And pretending your cup is full doesn't make it true. It just makes you a liar. Because here's what they don't tell you about people pleasers. They're not actually kind. They're terrified. Terrified of rejection. Of conflict. Of being seen as selfish or difficult or too much. So they perform goodness while slowly dying inside. But real kindness? Real generosity? It comes from overflow, not obligation. It comes from choice, not compulsion. It comes from a person who knows their worth isn't determined by their usefulness. A 2023 study on authentic altruism found that people who practice self-compassion alongside other compassion experience deeper relationships, better mental health, and more sustainable helping behaviors. Because they're not giving from fear. They're giving from fullness. And that changes everything. The kind person doesn't need to be fixed. They need permission to be human. And it starts with one radical act. Choosing yourself without apology. Tonight, I want you to try something. Notice the next time someone asks you for something. Before you automatically say yes, pause. Put your hand on your chest. Feel your heartbeat. And ask yourself, do I actually want to do this? Or am I just afraid of what happens if I don't? Then make your choice from truth, not terror. One honest no. One small boundary. That's how healing begins, not with more giving but with finally receiving your own kindness. And here's my question for you. If your worth isn't determined by how much you give, who are you? Would the world still love you if you stopped performing? Or have you been running from that question your entire life? Comment below, because maybe it's time to find out who you are when you're not busy saving everyone else.